Welcome to Java Fundamentals for Android Part 1. So this is a 5-part series with 4 goals. We want to explain key Java concepts to people with very little programming experience or no programming experience. We want to show the Java syntax, we want to introduce people to the jargon, and at the same time we want to keep everything as brief as possible, because the best way to learn is to do it rather than talk about it. In this video, we're going to talk about the Java type system as well as variables. So why do we need Java in the first place? When we make an app or when we write a program, we have to instruct the computer in a language it can understand. But computers speak in ones and zeros. We don't want to resort to having to write machine code or machine language or type in ones and zeros into the computer. So we use a programming language which can easily be translated into machine code that the computer can understand, and that's Java. There's really 4 stages to programming. First, we translate our ideas into Java code. Second, we send that code on to the compiler. Now, the compiler is a special program that takes a look at the Java code and then sees if it complies with the rules of Java and general syntax requirements. And if it doesn't, if it spots any errors, it complains, and we have to fix those problems before we can continue. However, if we pass the compiler scrutiny, the compiler will translate the Java into something that's executable by the machine. And at this point, the program starts to run. And this is when we are able to discover if it behaves as expected. Because sometimes there's things that we miss and things that the compiler misses and the program crashes. Now, we have to fix those problems, and oftentimes a big part of developing an app is trying to break it, trying to spot all the errors. But if everything goes well, the program finishes. So what are those things that the compiler checks? One of them is the particular rules and the structure that Java has. And Java pays particular attention to data because programming is primarily about manipulating data. And Java enforces a set of rules called a type system to distinguish between different kinds of data. In Java, each value must have a particular type. And by type, I mean category. You can really think about types as categories. For example, whole numbers or integers are of type int, and they're a category, and they include things like the number 4 or the number 2001. Another category might be a boolean. A boolean is something that can only have 1 or 2 values. It's either true or it's false. Another example of a type is string. String is a sequence of characters. It's a piece of text. All your base, that's a string. So how do we keep track of all this data? Well, we need to put it somewhere, and the place we put it is a variable. And variables act as containers to hold the data. Just like the raw data, the container itself has a type. And in a declaration, we specify the variable's type as well as its name. So here we have a variable called myValue and has type int. So we can put whole numbers into it. And this is what we do with assignment. So here we are assigning the value 4 to the variable myValue. Note how the value 4 is an integer, the same type as its container, myValue. Declaration and assignment, of course, can also be combined, and we see here 2 examples. In the first one, we're putting the number 6 into another value, and in the second one, we're putting the characters War and Peace into a variable called longRead. So variables aren't any good if we can't use them to manipulate data. So here we're putting the value 16 in the variable a, here we're putting the value 2 in the variable b, and if we divide a by b, we can actually put the result in a variable called c, which will hold the value 8. The gray text that you see on the right is something called a comment. So anything that's got 2 slashes in front of it will be ignored by the compiler. It won't affect the running of the program. So we'll be using this notation throughout the slides. To give you another example, we've got the value fish, which is being stored in the variable main. We've got the value and chips being stored in the variable side. And if we combine the two, we can actually store the result in the value meal. So meal will store the value fish and chips. So to recap, Java is an intermediary language used to help us communicate instructions to the computer. We use variables to store and manipulate data, but everything in Java must have a type. And we declare variables by specifying the type as well as the name. And we assign values to the variables with the equal sign. Lastly, the type of data must match the type of the variable. Thanks for watching. Join us for part 2, where we'll be discussing objects, classes, and methods.